Hello, and welcome to the MMQB NFL podcast. That's Albert Breer over in Massachusetts. I'm Conor in New Jersey, and we got our hot seat episode coming, and I will put the typical disclaimer in front of it, which some people don't think you need. Other people, it's a part of life. This happens, but I would say this now, having covered the NFL for 15 years, having lost jobs myself, that we're going to add the necessary caveat that this is something that doesn't, give us a great deal of pleasure, but it's something that you have to talk about because it's a very important part of the NFL calendar. It's not like, everyone will say, well, these coaches are making $7 million a year and then they're going to get paid not to work. Who cares? I agree. Who I care about are like the people who are like the quality control coaches, and this was their only shot, and they weren't making anywhere near $7 million, and they moved their family to Indianapolis, and now have to figure out what the F they're gonna do, and try to jump in because college cycle's already over, and what are you gonna do?
There's a lot of people who are affected in every one of these. Like I even thought about it like during the Michigan thing last week, like where it's like, I mean, can you imagine like, you're a position coach and now your kids have to change school because of that. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, so these are real life situations, obviously. And it is to some degree what they all signed up for. They all know they all know what they're in for, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't sting and it doesn't affect them. And so like every one of these has got dozens of stories like that, like where so-and-so has to pull up stakes and move and find new schools. And a lot of these cases, it means the family's spending 4 months with their dad in another city. You know what I mean? Like, so there's stuff like that for sure you want to be cognizant of.
Oh man. I was talking to one coach who said that so his son was in kindergarten, I want to say, and the teacher was like a football fan, and I guess just flippantly brought up the tenuous nature of his dad's job security to the child who was in kindergarten. And she's like, wait, what? He's like, oh yeah, I feel like if the defense doesn't play well, like your dad's probably going to get fired at the end of the year. And then the kid's like, what? And if you don't think that, it's like, I remember talking to one NFL coach he's in the family business, right? And dad was a coach, his dad was a coach, his dad was a coach, and he would go into school during the day, and the principal would have like a copy of the newspaper, and he'd be like, "Hey, I just want to pull you aside and let you know that like this is what people wrote about your dad today. Like, are you going to be okay? Is everything going to be all right? Do you want to just have class in here?" Like, this is insane. And this is the pre-Kevin Patullo house egging era. And it's only gotten worse. So, I don't know, just a little bit of sympathy for these people.
For sure.
Before we get there, I just wanted just a very, very quick announcement. I actually, for those of you guys who don't know, I work for a charity called the Greater Newark Holiday Fund, and we did an awesome Giving Tuesday drive just a couple of weeks ago. And I just want to give people, if you have a Christmas giving plan, a year-end holiday giving plan, I just want to throw out there, holidayfund.org. We do everything. It's a one-stop service for diapers for needy families, food pantries. The need is greater than ever. Okay. Our lines at food pantries are growing by the minute. We're getting new clientele every single day at all of our partner service agencies. So if you have an opportunity to check out holidayfund.org, we inject charities with money at the end of the season because their funds are depleted and they're dried out. Right. So that's what we aim to do. Just check it out. Okay. And all right, let's get back to the hot seat episode.
No, it's great. It's honestly, check it out. Like Connor's done great work with them for a long time. So yeah, I'll second that for you and we can move on.
Excellent. Thank you. So this was initially a cycle where, Albert, I thought, and just, I start kind of making calls on this in middle of October. And then some coaches go on a run and they save their job. Some coaches, do the opposite, and then they end up kind of losing their job. This one I thought was going to be a pretty concise, it was going to be a small cycle. But you and I were talking a little bit before the show, and we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pretty easily. And now, not all 10 of these are going to happen. And I think we have a couple reasons why, but just broadly, I mean, how did we get here? Because this seems like, again, we've had big cycles, and then that usually leads to a small one, and then a big one. This might be big one followed by big one.
Yeah, it might be. And I think it's, you know, it's hard to say that there's one thing that ties them all together. I'm just like looking at them now. We obviously have the two that are already there,
right?
Which is the Giants and the Titans. So if you get 6 more, then that means you got 8. If you get 8 more, that means you got 10. So we're already into it. You know, I just think like it's I think there are some teams that have failed to live up to expectations. There are some coaches that are still relatively early in their tenures who haven't created the bump that maybe the owners expected. And I just think the way this stuff gets talked about now, you know, I think in a year you have like the normal climate, which is like, you know, I think ramps up a little bit every year. And then you have first year coaches this year that get this huge bump. And I think it creates this in other cities like, well, what the hell? Like we've been told to wait. And look at what Mike Vrabel's doing in New England. Look at what Liam Cohen's doing in Jacksonville. Look at what Ben Johnson's doing in Chicago. And I think that's a natural thing too that happens, you know, where it's like the fan bases and, you know, then eventually the owners start to look at it and say, well, wait a minute. I was told this was going to take 3 or 4 years to rebuild. Why?
Right.
You know, and that a lot of times can be devoid of circumstance. That can be devoid of the situation that was inherited, where, you know, a lot of people will just look at it blindly and say like, well, you know, how come Vrabel, Cohen, and Johnson can do this, but you can't? You know, I mean, it's just sort of is what it becomes. You know what I mean? Like without taking into account that all 3 of those guys have quarterbacks who are drafted in the top 3, right? And you know, maybe you know, you look at those situations and you can pick apart a few circumstances where you say, okay, like this explains it a little bit more than just the coach coming in and winning, with all due respect to the job those guys have done, because all 3 of those guys have been fantastic.
Right. All right. So let's jump through them here, and I'm going to run down the list. And what I want to do for each of these teams, I want to handicap the chance that this actually goes. And then I want to give the people, let's say 2 or 3 names that they can hang on to, if that makes sense. And so the first one here is the Giants. And Albert, I would venture to guess that this is a 100% chance that this job will open because the job is already open.
Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit about this job. I would say just looking broadly at the teams that we have at our disposal, this is probably the best or the second best opening in terms of the talent pool that you're going to have. There's a blue blood nature to this organization that, while it has fallen on hard times, I mean, listen, the Giants won 2 Super Bowls in 2007 and 2010. It's not like this is ancient history. I like this opening. You already have a quarterback. Yeah. You have a left tackle. You have some pass rushing talent. Okay, you rebuild the secondary, and you can make a run at the division in the next 2 years. I don't think that's out of line, right?
I mean, I think, like, you know, I look at it like, and I've sort of like used this line over the last few years, is like, okay, how many guys are on the roster that you can say will probably be there in 3 years? There are a bunch with the Giants.
A lot. Yeah.
Jackson Dart, Malik Neighbors, I think Theo Johnson, Andrew Thomas, Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Abdul Carter. Like, there are, I would say, a bunch of guys, and a lot of those guys play premium positions. You know what I mean? Like that's Neighbors, that's Thomas, that's obviously Dart, that's Carter. Like I look at it like I've sort of had them as a surprise team because I think that they are close to like breaking through. And for one reason or another, it hasn't happened yet. I would say the one drawback is you need to be okay with working in New York, which is a different environment, but I'd say it's different. You covered both teams, so you can give insight into this. It's not quite the same with the Giants as it is with the Jets.
No, covering the Jets and coaching the Jets is, and I think even that's changed. In 2010, covering the Jets or coaching the Jets was probably like putting your what's in a vice every day and just squeezing it a little tighter,
Yeah.
Whereas the Giants, there is a, I don't know what it is.
Steadiness.
There's
Steadiness.
there's a what?
Steadiness.
There's a steadiness to it. Yeah. And so I think that, you're not really worried about anything. I mean, Brian Dable is probably the most volatile coach that they've had in my lifetime.
Yeah.
In terms of, going from Fossil all the way up to Dable. But like there was no, I mean, the biggest controversy may have been him taking issue with the concussion spotter, which Jackson Dart has the same issue with the concussion spotter. So, I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't make light of concussions, but I do think that Jackson Dart feels like he's being singled out. And so Brian Dable was backing him on that. And I think he was 0 for 4 on actually being spotted when he was getting taken out of these games. So whatever. That's just a long way of saying that the controversies with that team don't blow up into full blown meltdowns. Unless Circi, unless, and I say this with all respect and niceness and all that, but unless you're someone like Joe Judge, who I think Joe Judge is a great coach, but Joe brought that on himself. That was a decision to go out and like trash other teams in the division and kind of go on this very frustrated, whatever you want to call it, diatribe that ended up costing him his job. Right. And so I think that's different, but even then it wasn't a controversy. It was just like, okay, you can't do that. And so here's the door. I think that in that way, like if you're capable, if you're winning 9 games or 8 games and you're putting together a decent product on the field, they're going to love you and you're going to stay there. And so for me, I think this is one of the best jobs.
Now, my question would be like, it's the presence of Joe Shane, right, as the GM. And like, is it a Mike McCarthy or is it a Chris Shula? You know what I mean? Like, is it, in other words, like, are you, after gambling a little bit with your last 2 hires with Joe Judge and Brian Daboll, are you going to go back to a guy who has previous experience? 3 of the 4 hires they've made since Coughlin have been first-time head coaches, right? McAdoo, Judge, and Daboll, right? The one guy they had with experience was Shermer. So do you go back to the well and try to find your own young guy, or do you find a guy with previous experience? And I think there's an interesting name here who could bridge the gap is Jeff Hafley in Green Bay. And he's from New Jersey. He coached, he has been a head coach. It was at the college level, but he has been a head coach. And there are a lot of Boston College ties in that building, right? So he's one guy. Lou Anarumo is another guy who was with Joe Shane in Miami. I would think he'll get a look. He's from Staten Island. And he's older, so he doesn't have the head coaching experience, but he's a little bit more experienced. I just think it's going to be interesting to see which way they go because, I mean, to strike out 4 times in a row, I mean, the Giants struck out in my lifetime. The Giants really struck out once before that, right? Because they had Parcells when I was a kid. Ray Hanley was a strikeout. Then they had Dan Reeves, who was good.
Yep.
And they had Fossil, who got to do a Super Bowl. Then they had Coughlin. Yep. Right? So, like this organization, like this is foreign territory for them since we go back to the 70s, right?
Yeah, but I think it's crazy to me that this is going to happen when the Steelers move on and Mike Tomlin move apart. Like you're not going to be able to keep recreating this. You know what? Yeah, right. It's just not possible because the underlying thing in all this, and I guess you could argue the Giants are a little bit different,
Yeah.
but I mean, it was Kerry Collins, but it was Phil Simms. Like, there were great quarterbacks that bridged the gaps for all of these coaches. And,
Yeah.
Bill Cowher handed off to Mike Tomlin with Ben Roethlisberger. And
Yeah.
so this isn't going to keep happening. And so I want to take I think some of the stigma should be removed from like striking out. I mean, the Eagles struck out, like,
Right.
the Eagles and whatever.
The Eagles strikeout was a relative strikeout, though. I mean, it wasn't like.
I mean, yeah, Chip Kelly won double-digit games in 2 of his 3 seasons there. He just didn't go to the owner's Christmas party. So, which you got to go.
I mean, so I think like a Halfley is interesting because he's young. He can be, and he does have head coaching experience. And I think one of the things that's interesting about Halfley too, just versus what they've had there, Halfley's ability to reach players, Micah Parsons, Xavier McKinney, who was seen as kind of like persona non grata with the Giants. Like he reaches Xavier McKinney and gets a great year out of him. I just think like Halfley's one that kind of checks boxes for the Giants, and I'm not saying that again, I'd still put him in like the dark horse category because I don't think you can say anything's automatic. Again, I think Anarumo's got like a good case there too. It's sort of interesting because he's from there. Like McCarthy, I think would be kind of like we want to stabilize things, and McCarthy's baseline in Dallas was 12 wins. You know what I mean? And he knows the division, but I think Halfley's kind of an interesting one for them.
Yeah. I had Halfley as my early favorite for that job. And if you follow any strange offshore NFL aggregation accounts, you would have believed that I said that he was getting the job. But I think that, yes, he is my early favorite for this job. He checks every box that the Giants need. He's going to be able to work with those defensive pieces. He has previous head coaching experience. The Giants organization
and ties to the his roots in the NFL are Shanahan. So
Shanahan roots in the NFL.
He has ties to those offensive coaches, which is going to give him a deep well of connections to go and get an offensive coordinator.
And he performed well at Boston College, which another great Giants coach at one point did.
Tom Coughlin. That was Tom Coughlin's breeding ground.
And a lot of people in that organization went to BC. I'm just saying that there's a lot there.
The owner.
Yes. So just saying. So anyway, so I think Giants 100% going to open.
Let me give you one more there.
Okay.
What do you think about Marcus Freeman?
So he was also on my short list. The Giants also have a lot of Notre Dame ties. Yep. And what Marcus Freeman brings, I think, are 2 things. I think that he is an excellent defensive coach. He's a former NFL player, which does well right now.
Means something, Yeah, Campbell, D'Amico, Vrabel, yeah. And
also with the Giants, I would say that the Giants are, I don't know. I'm going to sound like a real Notre Dame homer here, but they're not quite the brand that Notre Dame is, but it's close in terms of relative to the rest of the NFL. Like Marcus Freeman has to be.
You mean like what Michigan pretends to be? Sorry.
Oh, come on. Let's let this guy. Let's let this poor guy put the pieces of his life back together first. He's got to be like the CEO of JP Morgan, right?
Yeah.
And Marcus Freeman's got to do so much that other college coaches don't have to do, because Notre Dame is it's an empire. It's a business. It's like a way of being. And so I think that NFL teams are attracted to that. I think he's done a fantastic job. I wish that he would just have beaten Northern Illinois and maybe but
he got to the national championship game in that season.
Yeah. And maybe hung a little bit tougher against Miami, but we played like a 31-year-old Carson Beck in that game, so I'm not going to fault him for losing that one. But I think he's another one. And if in fact, if I had to, so I wrote like a little short list when Dable was fired, and I would say Halfley and Freeman go 1-2 for me. I mean,
Okay.
that's probably
They
it. I
both
mean,
make sense. I think they both like kind of fit the Giants ethos too. You know what
I
I
agree.
mean? Like, so for
Yeah.
sure.
Guys, I have to tell you about Cash App. Scammers know the holidays are busy for everyone, which can make us all targets for scams. That's why Cash App builds in protection to help keep your money safe while you're checking off your shopping list. If you're about to send money to someone for a deal that's too good to be true and Cash App flags it as a potential scam, they'll warn you before you send the money. Cash App also gives you an extra layer of protection with features like Security Lock. You can require a PIN, a Face ID, or a fingerprint to unlock your account and move money. So even if someone gets a hold of your unlocked phone at a party, your money is right where you left it. Gift yourself some peace of mind this holiday season and download Cash App. For a limited time only, new Cash App customers can use our exclusive code to earn some additional cash. For real. Just download Cash App. Use your exclusive referral code SECURE10 in your profile. Send $5 to a friend within 14 days, and you'll get $10 dropped right into your account. Terms apply. That's money. That's Cash App. Cash App is a financial services platform, not a bank. Banking services provided by Cash App's bank partners. Prepaid debit cards issued by Sutton Bank, member FDIC. Promotions provided by Cash App, a Block Inc. brand. Visit cash.app/legal/podcast for full disclosures. All right, Titans, Albert. Again, 100% chance that this job is open. Unlike the Giants job, where I thought that Mike Kafka had a shot, but I don't, and this is just me talking. I probably don't think he has one anymore. I think he's losing a little bit of ground in that. I don't think Mike McCoy has a shot at the full-time job. If I were the Titans, I would interview Bones Fossil because he's already on staff, or at least hope that you can keep him. But otherwise, I mean, this is a blow up. And if you're Borgonzi, you want to start over. And what I've heard from this job, I think a week or two ago, was young was what they wanted. Like young, energetic, someone that's going to come in there and stir the pot, get everybody going, and bring the juice. That said, and again, this is just me talking, I think this is a team that is looking at the completion of their new stadium next year. They're looking at a lot of variables that are out of their control, and maybe a name here helps where somebody who's done it before is
So,
important,
I mean, I think when this all started, we were, what you do is you immediately look at the connections. So Chad Brinker, their president of football operations, where did he come from? He came from Green Bay. Who was
Yep.
the head coach in Green Bay?
Mike
Most of
McCarthy.
his time there was Mike McCarthy.
Yep.
Mike Borgonzi, where did he come from? Kansas City. Who is the offensive coordinator in Kansas City, who also has head coaching experience,
Matt Nagy.
who has been there twice now, is
Yeah.
Matt Nagy. So, like, there are some easy names to draw there. Reggie McKenzie also in that building. They're really drawing Dave Ziegler. Like, so if you want to look down the Patriot like lane, like Brian Flores is somebody who has connections both to Ziegler and to Borgonzi. Borgonzi and Flores were actually together at Boston College, believe it or not. So like I'm with you. Like I think what they wanted to do when they came in was like, okay, like we want to look at everything here. Like when they let Callahan, when they let Brian Callahan go, it's like, we're going to use this time to research and we're going to call a list based on what works and what doesn't work. And we're going to look at everything. And so, they've been able to do that. The interesting thing about the point that you made about young, right, is most of those names are defensive names. And I think that's me. So I look at, like, I think it's 5 defensive coordinators that are young, like the young guy, like we're talking about, like the young, energetic guy that you're looking for, right? 5 defensive coordinators to me fit into that. We talked about Halfley, right? Jesse Minter with the Chargers, Matt Burke with Houston, Anthony Campanelli with the Jaguars, Chris Shula with the Rams. Like, I think those 5, like, to me, it's like, this is sort of the result of everybody tapping the young offensive coach pipeline and never tapping the young defensive coach pipeline. Is that, like, now I think you've got like a bunch of real candidates and guys who actually like have head coach qualities that are in that defensive pipeline.
And then Mike McDonald
And then
makes it
you have a couple
okay.
older guys like a Brian Flores, like who's been around. Obviously, he's a little older than those guys, and then obviously Lou Anarumo. But there are a lot of good defensive names.
He yeah, Mike McDonald makes it okay. He shows you that, and here's the thing about this, and I want to just say this. There's a lot of good offensive coaches that aren't meant to be head coaches, and they can come and coordinate your offense, and it will be okay. Okay, right? And I'm not saying that about anybody in particular, but this
I mean, Mike
constant
McDonald looks like a walk-off home run for the Seahawks right now. We'll see how
yeah,
that looks in 24 hours. But like, I mean, going into tonight, because we're always subject to change our mind, right? But like, no, I mean, like McDonald so far looks like, I mean, grand slam
has
for Josh.
incredible emotional intelligence too when it
Yeah.
comes to his own staff, where Ryan Grubb is a little bit of a stretch higher, and so you immediately, and this is hard for first time head coaches to do after 1 year, to go back up to the owner's suite and say, hey, I gotta pull a plug on this, and you got to pay this guy an extra couple $1,000,000 that you weren't planning on paying him, because I need a different offensive coordinator. And it's worked, and he's nailed it, and they're a Super Bowl contender
So
because of
the
it.
other thing I did hear about this one that I think is sort of interesting is whether it's because she doesn't want to be attached to it or she doesn't want to be blamed for it, I have heard that this really is going to be in Brinker and Borgonzi and their group's hands. Like this is going to be a football people's decision, you know?
Well, and Amy's had some tough PR, right,
Yeah.
over the last little bit, and so I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
So give me a name. I'll give you a name, and then I'm going to give you
For
one
them,
surprise. Yeah.
so as far as energizing the place and like
Yep.
fitting the market and all of that, you know, I kind of like Matt Burke there.
Nice. Interesting. Okay.
He's in the division, right? So you kick out the leg from underneath the division winner. Like you've got the Ivy League thing with him, which he's an
Dartmouth.
interesting guy. So he actually grew up, believe it or not, one town over from me in Massachusetts, which there aren't a lot of NFL people, a lot of pro football people from the state of Massachusetts. But Matt Burke happened to grow up one town over from me.
He, like you, is almost 50 also.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm halfway there, just to set the record straight.
No problem.
Um, yeah, I'm on the wrong half right now, but yeah, um, of my 40s. So I like, but I think that he's kind of like somebody who he fits. He fits the prototype of what you expect a football coach to look like and carry himself like, right? And he's also got the Ivy League background, which I think is going to, I think it's going to appeal to some owners, you know? So he's sort of an interesting one for me just because I do think like he's another one, like where you look at it, he checks some boxes, you know? So I do think like whoever goes in there is going to have a great plan for the quarterback. Like, and so that's on the Matt Burks, that's on the Jesse Minter. Like, and I think Minter's in the running there. I think Shula's in the running there. You know, so like I think all those guys are sort of in that group. But I think whoever it is, if it's going to be a defensive guy, it's going to have a great plan for the quarterback.
Yeah. So I'll offer the counter to that, right? Is that I think this could go one of two ways from that direction, where it's again, I just think sometimes the tenor of these searches, and I've asked, I mean, you talk about this stuff all the time, and you never know where it's going to go. But couldn't you see this team getting far down the hole and then just being like, shit, we got to hire Mike McCarthy? It's just, you know what I mean?
Yeah, McCarthy makes a lot of sense for them too, for sure. And you have the pre-existing relationship. You know, I think like if you're them and you're saying like we just need to stabilize, right? Then McCarthy makes some sense.
Probably a little bit easier for the fan base, and I'm not saying one is a better coach than the other, but probably a little bit easier for the fan base to take than Nagy, I would guess, just in terms of optics. Now, I'm not saying one is a better coach than the other right now, but if you're thinking about like riling up the fan base, it's like, okay, Mike McCarthy, proven quarterbacks guy, whatever, which I think is its own kind of BS.
I mean, if you want to reestablish trust with the fan base and like, look, like the team's still a ways off. So if you start 0-3, I'd say there's probably less panic within your fan base if Mike McCarthy's the coach versus one of the younger guys, you know?
And then one more that I just want to, so I've I've put this across, so I don't want anybody to go freaking out about this. I've asked a million people about this, and they've all said I have no idea what you're talking about. But it's just something that's of interest to me, and this is a person who is connected to connected to Tennessee, and in this cycle in particular, we have all these genius young defensive coaches, and the godfather of almost all of them. Like, I think if you look at the top 5 defenses, like 4 of the 5, including the guy who's coordinating it, are from the Jim Schwartz tree. Jim is a former head coach, didn't do a bad job with the Lions, is arguably the best or second best defensive coordinator in the NFL. His defensive end is going to break the sack record, having almost never led a game this year. And I don't know. I mean, Jim is an interesting guy. I don't know. Could they bring in Jim for an interview? Just an interview. He used to be there in Tennessee.
He'd be an interesting name for sure. Yeah.
I don't know.
Or does he come with Matt Burke as the defensive coordinator?
Or he comes with Matt Burke as the defensive coordinator. So I don't know. Right. Just an interesting one to think about.
We'll get to Cleveland whether or not he'd be available for that. But yeah, that's actually an interesting thought too.
Okay, let's go to Arizona.
Well, one other name for Tennessee that I think we should mention, just Arthur Smith, I think. Is one.
Yes.
Like I don't want to let that go. Like I think if you're looking for an offensive name, again, like he's somebody who has such great knowledge of the ownership there and has been, has seen several different staffs go through there, and he was there when they were at their height under Vrabel. I think Arthur Smith would be a very sensible hire for them.
I totally agree. I think that would be, and I like Art as a designer. I know he gets kind of knocked, but it's like our quarterbacks were Desmond Ridder, 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers with the broken wrist. Like, come on, let's give this guy a little bit of credit. Players who play in that scheme really like him.
I think Aaron Rodgers looked as comfortable as he's looked in maybe a couple of years on Monday night. Like they started to find something, so I think he's an interesting name there for sure.
What's interesting about Art Smith too is I did a story about him last year being a candidate, and I reached out to the Steelers and I was like, who's like one of Art's guys, like one of his favorite players, like someone who can talk ball. And Steelers were like, you should talk to is Dan Moore. And Dan Moore, believe it or not, is now the left tackle of the Tennessee Titans. So not saying that's, maybe they ask him about him. I don't know. Who knows? All right. We got a lot to get through. Let's punch the pedal here.
We'll go fast for now.
Yeah. Arizona is the next one on the list that we created. And I'll see if what I'm going to end up doing here is I'm going to end up writing down some of the names that we talked about. And then maybe Shelby can fly this up on the YouTube version so you guys can see it, or I'll tweet it up later. But
Arizona, I think, is at this stage where it's like, I think Michael Bidwell, who's the owner there, really likes the guys he has in charge, likes Monty Ossenfort, likes Jonathan Gannon. But like the level of regression this year, I think has forced him into a spot where, what do you do? Because it seemed like over the first 2 years, their ability to accumulate draft picks, their ability to accumulate young talent kind of had the team going like this. So do you look at this year, if you're Bidwell, and say, well, like we tried with Kyler Murray and it didn't work, and like that sort of blew up the plan, so I'm going to give these guys some grace? Or do you say, we can't have this in the third year of a new program?
Right. All right, let's let's average together. What are you saying your chances of this turning over are out of 100%? And then I'll do some quick math.
70.
Okay. I was going to say 60.
I would say it's less for GM. I'd say 70 for coach, maybe like 40 for GM. I don't know.
Okay. So we'll put GMs in a different bucket. So let's say between the two of us, 65% chance that this thing is going to turn over. We're like weathermen. It's like 65% chance it's going to snow, and then it doesn't matter. Who gives a shit, right? It's not going to snow anyway. Some candidates that you like for Arizona, because this is a really interesting one, right? It's like, who would you match make for a job like this? Because that whole offense needs to get reimagined. I mean, you're going to need to bring in a quarterback. I don't think the pieces are bad, but I think you probably have to go offense, and this is not necessarily the year that you want to do that. And probably the best offensive play caller with experience is a guy that you already fired in Cliff Kingsbury. So you're looking at Joe Brady, maybe you're looking at Kubiak.
I mean, is this the team that takes a swing on Grant Udinski?
So I'm glad you brought that up. There's Grant Udinski. There's
Because if
Declan
you're
Doyle.
looking for like you haven't won in a while and you're looking for somebody to just completely energize and change the dynamic for you, you're in a division that has like where those sorts of chances have paid off with Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco, with Sean McVay in LA, and now with Mike McDonald in Seattle. Like teams taking chances on younger coaches without head coaching experience. Um, you know, like and then like if you want to go back and look at it, like I think Michael Bidwell's biggest regret
Was
and
not
I'm
hiring Sean McVay.
right because they were high on him. They were really really high on him.
Ooh.
Their ex general manager Steve Keim loved Sean McVay.
So
Does this become the Grant Udinski spot where a lot of people don't know that name, but that was Kevin O'Connell's right hand man in Minnesota, and Kevin kept promoting him until like somebody else gave him the opportunity to be a coordinator.
So I'll put in there if we're gonna shine a spotlight on kind of your young gun coordinators, you would put Grant in that list. You would put Davis Webb, I think, from Denver in that list. I think you would put Declan Doyle from Chicago in that list. Although I think, maybe some of these guys need an extra year. And I don't think enough people are talking about Brad Idzik. I mean, I think that Brad is 34, did a really good job of coming in to a veteran staff and has helped turn that thing over. So, I mean, I think if you're Arizona, this is the only way you go, Albert, because you're not going to fire Jonathan Gannon to get a hot young defensive coach.
Right.
I feel like that's kind of what you already have.
Sort of like was thinking like Shula might make, but Shula is like in a lot of ways is what Gannon was,
Right.
So
yeah.
That's hard,
Yeah.
So I would say like to me, like the idea of Grant Udinski there actually makes some sense if you're thinking about it,
So let's put those guys there. And again, we're just playing around. We're just having some fun. Football season is in full swing, and Underdog is the best place to get in on all the action. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just pick whether your favorite players will go higher or lower on stats like rushing yards, receptions, touchdowns, and more. Get your picks right, and you can win up to 5,000 times your cash. This week on Underdog, I'm looking at Caleb Williams and the revenge game against the Green Bay Packers, a huge divisional matchup. I think he'll go higher than 2 touchdowns. He's got to avenge that game and that missed touchdown, the interception in the end zone that ended it last time. Download the app today and use promo code MMQB to score $75 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. That's promo code MMQB. Underdog. Make picks. Win money.
Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/play and get terms _DFS_.html for details. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In New York, call the 24/7 HOPE line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369.
The Raiders are next. Chances of this turning over, Albert, I think are
high.
Getting high. Yeah. I mean, I would say
I would just say this, like it sounds to me like people there think they're getting fired. Like
right.
now, I sometimes that means something, sometimes it doesn't. You know what I mean? Like, but people there are people on the coaching staff that believe that's the way the wind's blowing. Whether or not like that winds up being what happens, we will see. But I also know there are some voices in that room, and Tom Brady isn't the only one. There are some voices in that room that weren't in there previously, and there's some big money people. Again, your Michael Meldmans, your Egan Durbins. I know people don't like those names don't resonate with people. These are big money people who came in and invested in the team. And so like, I think the whole idea of bringing in Pete Carroll and paying $6 million for Chip Kelly was we're going to change the face of the Raiders, and we can't be perceived this way anymore. And like, I think they probably look at this now and say, like, this didn't work, you know?
I mean, if they had their ideal way, this was going to be Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly, and Robert Saleh. And it was going to be a big money staff, and, you know, there was going to be a clear succession plan. But
do you circle back to Saleh now?
I think you circle back to Saleh. I think that he would come in and he'd bring juice right away.
Yeah. Because like one thing you can look at here is the experience of the general manager. That's John Spytek, who, you know, was in Tampa with Todd Bowles. And so he's seen it work with a defensive head coach before. You know, again, like, I think Saleh's previous experience helps him. I think he would bring some energy, some juice to the building. He just needs to have an offensive plan, but his connections, again, are in that Shanahan tree for the same reason, like it works for Hafley, because Hafley worked for Kyle Shanahan and Matt LaFleur. Almost all of Robert Saleh's background is working with Shanahan people, including Kyle Shanahan himself, you know?
Right.
So, like, I think I would say Saleh would be, you know, a common sense hire for them, who's still young-ish in the way I'm young-ish. I think he's older than me, actually. So can we say that on this show, right? Like,
sure.
I think Robert's actually like a couple months older than me. But yeah, like, I think he would make some sense just as far as like a guy who can be a culture setter, which I think is what they were going for with Pete Carroll. It just hasn't worked.
I agree.
I do wonder, though, does the run they made at Ben Johnson, does the failed run they made at Ben Johnson, does that affect them?
In what way?
Well, just they had to work to get him in for an interview. Like, he wasn't going to interview with them at first, and it took Tom Brady making a phone call, right? Mm-hmm. Like, for them to even get him into the room and to interview. And so they made a very real run at him. Do you think their failed run at Ben Johnson and now seeing what Ben is doing in Chicago affects them in some way?
Possibly. I mean, I think that the perception of this job is always going to be such. I don't know if Brady, this is going to have to be a lot of Brady cleaning this up behind the scenes too, Albert. Yeah. I think, like, I mean, you know, if I'm a head coach, I want to know, like, is he for real wearing the headset when I go in there? You know, I mean, is this actually happening? And, you know, is he going to be in my offensive coordinator's office? Because I want that shit, you know? I mean, really, I mean, if it was helping, it would have been helping, right? Yeah. Like, and so I think that all that comes into play. Perhaps someone like Cliff, but I think Cliff's going to be highly selective for his next job, and I don't think he's going to go to the Raiders. I really don't. I think he's got a great spot with a great quarterback now. Why would you leave?
I think Tennessee seems like it might be a match for Cliff too. That was one. God, now we're going back, but like Tennessee could be a match for Cliff.
Yeah, good area, good market. You know, I think all that stuff makes sense. But yeah, the Raiders candidate pool is a little bit tougher, Albert. It's just a little bit tougher to put together. Like, Kelvin Shepherd is like a dark horse name there, right? Where, you know, could you just bring somebody in that's just got straight juice, and Max Crosby is going to be in your corner, and you look at him and you say, like, okay, let's go. I'll tell you who I really like is, and we haven't talked about him with the young names, but Clayton Adams with Dallas, like, you know, you want a guy who's going to be able to at least like install a running game for Ashton Jenney and get that going. I mean, that makes everywhere he's gone, they've had an aces run game, but this is a tough one. I mean, I don't know. Any other names for this one, you think, or no?
See, I'm probably like in 15 minutes going to come back with one the way I just did.
Let's do it. That's fine. Let's but
go. Yeah, you know what? Here's another one. If we're let's say talking about the Ben Johnson route, does Clint Kubiak make some sense?
Clint Kubiak would make some sense. I think he's got to go in there and you got to slam dunk the interview if you're him.
Yeah,
and
I think Clint, like, for people who don't know, like, I think Clint's very self-aware. He's very intelligent. He's a lot like his dad, you know, which if you had ever been around Gary Kubiak, you know, like, Gary's one of the best people I've covered in 20 years doing this. Gary does not carry himself like a football coach. He's very level, very calm, very understated, and that's the way Clint is. So you just have to be comfortable with that.
Yeah, and I would say this too, right?
He's incredibly intelligent, and he can reach players, and I would say this, like, he's self-aware. Like, a big part of the success in Seattle was like him looking back at all the things that went wrong for him in New Orleans.
Well, I think a lot of that too is injuries. But I'll say this.
Yep.
Whatchamacallit? I think what I've heard from Cliff is, he's just like a little understated. And that's not a bad thing. People were saying the same thing about Mike McDonald. And I'll say this, on game day, everyone said he's an absolute animal.
Yep.
And so when he hits the field, he's an absolute animal. So go get it. I like that one. All right. Browns. I think the chances of this turning over, it really depends. I mean, I think that there's a smart conversation to be had here. If you're Cleveland, like, and especially if you're Haslam, you've put all this heft into these plans, right? It's like the Paul D. Podesta plan, the Andrew Berry plan, the John Dorsey plan, and like, we're gonna get equity and we're gonna draft and we're gonna ba 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 ba. The only thing that you've done right is hire a 2-time coach of the year in Kevin Stefanski, who's made it all work. And I don't give a shit about talent. And it's like, oh, well, Harold Fannin and Quinshon Judkins, and like, look at all this stuff. There's no straight arc in football. There's just not.
Yeah.
Like, these guys, there's no guarantee that any of these guys, look at Brian Thomas, are going to be better next year than they are right now. The quarterback situation's a mess. And if I'm Cleveland, like, I'm looking around and being like, Kevin Stefanski is the one thing we did right. And if we let him go, he's going to get a job somewhere else. And he becomes candidate 1 on the market.
He screams Giants to me.
I know, me too.
You know what I mean? Like, he just screams Giants to me. Like, if he were to
pull that off. Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, like, I just like look at it like, and I think you do have to look at it through this lens. Here's my question though. Okay. Cause I've turned a little bit on this. I thought no way for the longest time. And, a lot of the people in Cleveland have picked up on some of the things that I've said over the course of the last few weeks, and that's valid. I don't think Jimmy Haslam knows what he's going to do right now, right? Like, I genuinely think like he's still mulling all of this over. I think he loves the setup that he has now. I think they tried forever to get it right and they feel like they've got 2 really good people in charge, in Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski. You pull Paul DePodesta out of it now. What does that mean? Does it change Andrew Berry's role? We'll see. And then on Stefanski specifically, that team looked dead on Sunday in Chicago.
Yeah.
And he's been through a lot there. And so I do think like it's fair to start to ask the question whether or not it's run its course there. In other words, like the last 2 years have not been good. And is Kevin Stefanski going to be capable of getting the spark out of the team that he needs when they're going into 2026? Can he reinvent what they are? And what they have been the last 2 years hasn't been very good.
Yeah.
They're going to continue. They're going to be younger next year than they are this year. With the 2 first-round picks, those guys, the second-year guys, can be a critical year of development for them. For Harold Fannin, like you said, Mason Graham, Carson Schlesinger, Quinshon Judkins. They've got they're right now at this point where it's like, okay, like we have to start building the young pieces on the roster up, reinvent the core, and find a quarterback. Can you do that with Kevin right now?
I think
like
been the Browns docket list for 20.
I know, but it's just like I think this is a 50-50 right now.
I agree. I was going to say chances of turning over about 50%. And then at this point, like it's almost like I'm not even ready for a candidate list because I
think if you do, I'll say this. I think if you do make a change, like if I'm Cleveland, I'm going and trying to find my version of Dan Campbell. Like I think they need that. I think that's what they need.
So the former
it's
player
like the kind
pool,
of like enough. The enough is enough. Like we're not going to be this. We're not going to be a joke anymore, coach.
And that former player pool gets you like Antonio Pierce. It gets you Kelvin Shepard. It gets you Anthony Weaver. It gets you
Anthony
Jeff
Weaver might be one.
Anthony Weaver, Jeff Ulbrich.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's one that just sticks out in that category is the problem.
Right. There's nothing that necessarily that screams Browns to me right now. But
you
this
had
next
Vrabel
one
in your building last year too, which is kind of the crazy thing about it.
Let him go. God, anybody could have had him. Anybody could have had him.
Yeah.
And then they all sat around and they're like, what do the Titans know that we don't? Nothing, clearly. So the Falcons are next on the list. I mean, I think this is a foregone conclusion, Albert. I think
gave me a
very
pause.
high rate of turnover.
The comeback the last week gave me a little pause, but it does feel like that's the way this is going. Again, from what I understand, like Blank has resolved at the end of the year to kind of gather all the information and make a decision. But I know a lot of people are expecting both spots here to be open.
Yeah.
So, and I'll give you a name here that I think. So I'll give you a name for GM. I'll give you a name for a coach if that works.
Mm-hmm. Let's do that.
Joe Brady interviewed really well there in 2021, and I just think that they haven't gotten quarterback right. Joe Brady's worked with the best player in the league the last couple of years. He's had a chance to kind of see things go wrong, see things go right. He came up in a very stringent system, right? Like
Sean
in
Payton.
New Orleans under Sean Payton. And then he had to learn to kind of relax that system to accommodate a once in a lifetime talent in Buffalo, right? So I think you have a guy who's worked with different types of quarterbacks. He's been around Drew Brees, he's been around Josh Allen, different ends of the spectrum, both obviously Hall of Fame players. And so he is one that I look at it knowledge of the division, knowledge of the franchise, having competed against them, having, the quarterback expertise to maybe try to get the most out of Michael Penix. And then on the GM side, potentially pairing him with James Lipfert in Houston, who's the assistant GM there, who is from Georgia originally, who's helped Nick Caserio build that team up, I think would be interesting. You have two young guys who kind of bring some energy there. I don't know, man. I hate that Raheem is. I feel like part of the problem, for Raheem Morris, is that he was kind of walking into something that wasn't a startup. It was okay, you're here to put us over the top, and it sucks because I don't know that he deserves what's going to be his fate here, but it kind of feels like you said, that's the way this one's trending.
Raheem will always go down as a consummate good individual who treats his coaches well. When this thing went haywire, started to go haywire, he wasn't firing everybody, he wasn't throwing people under the bus. And I think that goes a long way. It's just unfortunate that he came in bringing that acumen as a defensive coach, and it took the Ulbrich hire to really turn around that defense. And I think, some of the position coaches that he brought over on that side of the ball too, to the point
quarterback thing has really undermined him.
And the quarterback thing hurts, right? I mean, it bounced him into the booth, out of the booth, and Penix just doesn't look. And again, a lot of this is it goes back to just a plan that never made any sense from a general manager who I think had everybody believing that this was a good idea. And the foundation of this roster just doesn't exist. You inherited a good offensive line that's going to eventually age out, right? And that's going to be something.
Matthews, Lindstrom aren't going to be around forever,
right? And so you didn't maximize that, and you put nothing into the defensive side of the ball. We're only now just seeing what Kyle Pitts is capable of, which is which is a little bit crazy.
Right? You took Drake London over Garrett Wilson,
yeah. And so I think that those are. I mean, again, this is a GM that I think really got two head coaches fired, right? I mean, and that's unfortunate, but I think it's a new day in Atlanta, and you come with your own guy. And I mean, I don't think it'll be Belichick, so that'll be exciting for whoever ends up getting that job. We have four more, Albert, here that I just want to buzz through really quickly. The Dolphins, we can go fast because I still so Mike
I think
McDaniel
could survive. Yeah.
I think McDaniel can survive this, and he's got Quinn Ewers going this weekend. That's a 7th-round pick that they have. You noted, I think, in your mailbag, this is once the #1 recruit in the nation. I mean, this kid has talent. It's just sometimes it goes a different way. It turns left or right, but
it's weird. I'm excited to watch him.
I am too.
Like I'm excited to see what he's capable of. I don't think it's going to be too big for him. Like, this is a guy who played at, the bluest of the blue blood high school programs. For people who don't know, he played for South Lake Carroll in Dallas, which is playing in front of 15,000 people when he started as like a freshman there. So like 15 years old, he's playing in front of 15,000 people. You know what I mean? Like, this is a kid who's probably not going to shrink to the moment. Played at the University of Texas, was at Ohio State. I did like his comment today, yesterday, where he was asked about playing against Burrow, and he said just 2 Ohio State guys going head to head. Which neither of those ones wound up working out for us, but both those guys have accomplished a lot since. But I you know what, like, honestly, like I think here's what you want to look at with Miami is, so you have an owner in Stephen Ross, who I think had heard a lot of people like you and I say, like, Mike McDaniel might be an incredible second chance hire for somebody. And I think it kind of forced him to think, like, well, wait a minute.
Why can't it just be us? Yeah.
Why can't that just happen here? And so his son-in-law is going to be more involved, a guy named Dan Silliman. And they've elevated Brendan Shore into a point where I think Brendan Shore is going to be kind of like Mike Disner is in Detroit, where you may have like a 3-headed monster there with the new GM, Brandon Shore, and the head coach. And so I think, like, you create this new structure, you bring back Mike McDaniel for a year. Mike McDaniel is under evaluation in 2026. Tua, I think, can essentially become your bridge quarterback, right? Because he's guaranteed $54 million next year. Maybe you can buy a draft pick. Maybe you can spend some money and buy a draft pick and get him off the roster. Or you could just look at that as a sunk cost and say, okay, Tua, now you're our bridge. You know what I mean? Like,
not even. Like, don't have him around. Don't have him around. Just Russell Wilson him. If you're like the Broncos,
you could. I mean, I'm all for. You know what though? I'm all for, like, based on where they're probably going to be picking. What you don't want to be in a situation where you're forced to take a quarterback.
No, but I think
you want to have flexibility not to take one if you don't believe in who's there. And based on what I'm hearing about this year's quarterbacks, like, you may be better off waiting an extra year anyway, especially if. I mean, I think Mendoza is probably trending to be the #1 pick now. Yeah. And the Dolphins aren't going to have the #1 pick, you know?
Yeah. I would say this, just, you know,
Miami native Fernando Mendoza.
I don't think that if you're Mike McDaniel, like, I wouldn't take that. Like, I'd be like, okay, I'll go interview for the Browns job. I'll go interview for the Giants job, and I'll get it, because there are no good offensive play callers on the market, and I'd rather work with anybody else than this guy. Like, I mean, I think that's just the long and short of it. I mean, he's backed Tua and defended him relentlessly for 4 years, and they're 3 years, and all Tua did was stand up and say, oh, well, nobody's showing up to the players only meetings and making Mike look bad.
Well, he also, like, they started to play better when they de-emphasized his role in the offense.
100%. So just get him a point guard. Just get him a point guard.
Which, like, you can get that to me is going to be like what's so interesting about watching Quinn Ewers play.
And if it can't be Quinn,
if this suddenly looks like a little bit like you have like some more big plays in the offense, that sort of thing with Ewers in there, like, holy crap, does that not reflect well?
Do Quinn Ewers and Jacoby Brissett, right?
Yeah.
Do Quinn Ewers and Kirk Cousins,
right?
I mean, just, you know. It's better than that. I don't know. But anyway, I don't think this is even at the 50% threshold right now of Mike going. I think he's liked in ownership, and I think the Quinn Ewers thing, we'll revisit it after that. These last 3, Albert, I think we have the Buccaneers, the Bengals, and the Jets, and I think we can lump them all together because a lot of it depends on 2 things. You got to be able to finish, okay?
Yep.
And you have to be able to... And it's going to have to turn into a disaster scenario, I think, in all 3 of these cases. I think the Bengals, I checked in on this recently. Everyone that I talked to said that it would be, the quote I got was out of character to fire on the Bengals.
What's that? Unbengal-like.
Unbengal-like, yes.
Yeah.
Zach, I only thought, and this is a good job by Paul Daner, I thought his contract ended in 2026. Paul reported at The Athletic it was 2027.
He has 2 years left, yeah.
I just don't think there's any way Mike Brown fires a coach with 2 years left on his deal. The only way that I see this happening, Albert, and here's the only reason, so I wrote something about this the other day, and you can find it on SI.com, okay, is that Joe Brady's probably going to get a job this offseason. Joe Brady was Joe Burrow's coordinator at LSU.
Right.
Okay. And so if the source of all of Joe Burrow's unhappiness is related to Zach Taylor in some way, which I don't have any indication that it is,
Right.
Zach Taylor lets him run the offense. So it's a pretty sweet deal if you're Joe Burrow, right? He's essentially the offensive coordinator. But if it's related to Zach Taylor and you're worried that you're not going to get, and I don't think it is, but if you're worried you're going to lose Joe Brady, then okay, then you go get Joe Brady. I don't think that's the case. The other name that's out there that probably won't be there, but has Bengals ties and Mike Brown is familiar with is Vance Joseph, right? So again, I think Vance probably gets one too, and we haven't brought him up yet, but I think he fits in all these places. He's gonna interview everywhere. And so that's my only thing with the Bengals is if you're worried that you're going to lose out on those two guys, you make a move. I don't think that that's going to happen. So, but if it does, I'll say this, that becomes the number one job on the market.
Yeah, because you got Joe Burrow and you got
country mile.
And you got Higgins. And now if you can fix the defense, holy crap, are you cooking with gas? So Tampa is fascinating to me because we've been here before. Every year in early December, I hear is Bowles all right? Are they going to go forward? Is he all right?
Although
and then every year they've dug themselves from the fire, and I'll pull it up. It's actually really interesting because I think I had it in my takeaways on Monday in my Monday morning quarterback column. Give me a second here. So but the pulling the season from the fire thing has like quieted all of those conversations over the last few years. So, and give me 1 second. Where is it? So, all right. Last year, last year they were 4-6 and they dug out of it to get to 10-7. The year before they were 4-7 and they dug out of it to get 9-8, winning their division in both those years. They were 8-9 the year before, and they won the division that year too. So they've won 3 division titles in a row. They've got a shot to do the same thing now. But these games against the Panthers are going to be critical because I do think that that's the one thing where if you look at it, if you're Tampa, you look at your core of players, and you say Dave Canales turned this around that quick, and he doesn't even have that great a roster, and they beat us out for the division. How did that happen? But as it stands right now, I mean, the Panthers really blew a golden opportunity last week losing to the Saints, So like right now with both those teams at 500, they play 2 of the last 3 weeks. Like it's going to be really interesting.
So, yeah, I mean, if I had to rank these, I would say in order of possibility opening, I would probably say Bucks, Jets, Bengals. But I mean, I don't think any of these are going to open, and it's all predicated on how these teams finish.
Jets. Jets. I would like hang that on like, herky jerky ownership. And I say that because like that's the one thing I do think they've made progress in the back end of the year. Like they don't have a quarterback, like that much is clear. I don't think they've stopped playing for Aaron Glenn. I think what you've gotten from Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji is a repudiation of what was built there previously, right? Like, and what they've done with some of the guys in the roster that they inherited. Yeah. And basically they're telling us without telling us those guys were overrated, right? They trade Quinnen Williams, they trade Sauce Gardner. We'll see what they do as far as the contracts for some of these other guys. I just know this. I know there are a lot of people who think Aaron Glenn's going to be a really good head coach. And I personally think you have to give him a second year.
I think it goes back to, and we'll tie a bow in it this way. It's New York. It's the Joe Judge principle. If you can finish the year not embarrassing yourself or the organization, you're probably fine. If you finish the year embarrassing yourself or your organization, you're probably not fine. I think Aaron Glenn's going to be okay. I'm not quite as sold as the people that you've talked to about it. I'm kind of lukewarm, but I'll say this: he's kind of already had a list of greatest hits this year. If you were to run them all together, that spell a coach who just doesn't look ready for the job. But a lot of people made fun of Dan Campbell for his opening press conference. A lot of people made fun of Dan for that first whole year, right? Like we're not biting kneecaps. Now, again, I'm out there as saying that like I think this Jess roster was better than anything that Campbell inherited, and I think they should have been a little bit more ahead of the 8 ball here. But we can argue semantics on that as much as you want.
Look,
but,
like that Lions team, that first Lions team started the season 0-10-1. And finished 3-3.
Yeah.
This Jets team started 0-7 and they're 3-4 since. So
right.
It's not good enough, and it certainly hasn't looked great the last couple of weeks, but they got an opportunity this week to go into New Orleans, and that should be a winnable game for them. And if they can go into New Orleans and win, then they've got a great opportunity to play spoiler against the Patriots and Bills the last 2 weeks of the season, one of those two spots.
It's going to be an interesting one, Albert. I'll tell you that. And we'll be covering it from every which way, every angle. Be sure to come back. So here's one thing that I can predict. We're going to do the Monday show after Sunday. And then
we might be a little unpredictable after that.
And then I think we're all going to enjoy our Christmas, which and even if you don't celebrate, if you're Hanukkah already, happy Hanukkah. Yep. I think I said that on Monday. I hope I said that on Monday. But if you're Hanukkah already, happy Hanukkah. Enjoy the rest of that. If you're Kwanzaa's coming up. Enjoy Kwanzaa. But that whole time, just spend some time with your family. We'll be back the Monday after Christmas, and plenty of time to talk football. So,
and actually, like to everybody who has similar heritage to me, Merry Christmas Eve also, because in my mom's, for people who don't know, I'm first generation. My mom is on my mom's side. My mom is Austrian. Off the boat, she didn't take a boat here. She off the plane, but and in Austria, Christmas Eve is actually a bigger deal than Christmas Day. So Merry Christmas Eve also.
There it is. All right. You guys heard it here first. Thanks as always for listening, for being a part of the show. And we'll see you on Monday.